Hello and welcome to today's ResNexus webinar. Today I'm going to go over the benefits and applications of electronic door locks, how they can help improve your operations and provide convenience for your guests. I'll also share the details of the ResNexus integration with door locks, and then we'll go over how to get started. First, here's a little about me. My name is Gavin Wadsworth. I'm a hospitality researcher and content writer for ResNexus, and I'm pleased to speak on this topic for you today. Thank you for attending, and I hope you get value out of today's webinar. So to start with, I'm going to go over, what exactly are ResNexus's door locks? Well, obviously locks are basically used to keep certain people out. Hopefully only you allow people to enter who you give permission to. Locks with physical keys work pretty well, but you do run into a few complications, like what if the keys get lost? What if somebody replicates the shape of the key? Electronic locks like keypads and RFID locks can help mitigate these problems, and these are the kinds of locks that ResNexus integrates, is these keypad and RFID locks. Not only can these locks be more convenient for your property and your guests, but they also come with some additional benefits, which we'll go over right now. The first is that these locks can be a component of contactless check-ins. This technology was emerging as a convenience factor even before COVID-19 and is still going strong as a growing guest preference. A full contactless check-in experience allows a guest to show up at the property, check in using their phone, either using a link sent via welcome email or text, or by scanning a QR code when they arrive at the property. And then they're able to access their room immediately. No waiting in line in the lobby or trying to get the attention of an employee or anything like that. Another benefit is the fact that you no longer need to give a physical key to the guests. The problem with a regular key is that you can't monitor how and when it is used. And if it gets lost or stolen, it can become a liability until you replace the lock, which can be both costly and time-consuming. If you still want to have a physical key, you could go with the option of RFID, key cards, or key fobs. This eliminates the problem of having to replace locks when keys are misplaced, since you can simply disable access for those old keys. And we'll get back to this option a little later in the presentation. Another benefit, with electronic locks, you can have more fine control over guest and staff access to rooms and facilities. So for example, if you have a maintenance person coming to make some repairs, you can provide them with a master code that only gives them access to the rooms you designate, and you can then delete that master code when the repairs are finished. The versatility and control that electronic locks offer can be incredibly helpful in many ways, and can offer greater security because of this. Integrated electronic locks also allow you to monitor the lock status online. Because of this, you can view the access log for any individual lock to find out who's been opening them and when, and using what codes. Hopefully, you never have to worry about people accessing areas during unexpected times, but the functionality is there in case of specific situations that may arise. You can also measure the battery levels and connectivity of locks integrated with your system. Now that we've gone over some of the major benefits of these door locks, let's move on to the ResNexus door locks integration so you can see how this actually works in your ResNexus software. Starting with the three main types of lock access that ResNexus provides with this integration. Not every lock we offer provides all three of these options, so you'll want to consult our catalog of door locks on our website to find the lock that's right for your preferences. The first type of access is Wi-Fi codes. So what this means is that the locks themselves are signed into your property's Wi-Fi, which allows you to modify the lock codes from your computer and have them update in real time. Note that this does not mean that the guests can open the locks over Wi-Fi. It just means that that's how the lock is receiving and sending information to you, the property owner. So in this case, the guest would simply type in the code they are provided. So if your Wi-Fi experiences an interruption for some reason, The locks should still function with the codes they last received. If you make updates to the lock codes, they should go through when the lock is next connected to your Wi-Fi. So if your property has spotty Wi-Fi, then your locks should theoretically work so long as they can be connected with enough frequency to update for your guests. This next access option could actually work even better for that specific kind of scenario where you have spotty Wi-Fi, and that's algorithmic lock access, and it doesn't require Wi-Fi connectivity at all. So here's basically how it works. It's kind of complicated. Hopefully I can get it across for you. So the lock has an internal encryption method that it uses to validate codes. And those codes, the way it encrypts them, is those codes are based on a given time period. So for example, let's say you have a guest coming to stay starting on April 5th, and their departure date is April 7th. Your ResNexus system knows the same encryption method that the lock uses, so ResNexus knows to generate the code for that date range, and it'll automatically match with the lock's code for that date range. So then you can just send that code to the guests, and that allows them to access their room. They punch in that code, and the lock recognizes it as valid, even though it doesn't have to talk to your ResNexus account at all. And because the code is based on those start and end dates, it won't function outside of that date range, so it'll automatically be set to only open during their stay. The only main downside is that you can't necessarily block access to a lock once it's been given. If you give someone a valid code for a date range, then that code will work for the entirety of that date range, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. With a Wi-Fi lock, you would have the benefit of being able to revoke access for a certain code at any time. And the other slight downside to algorithm locks is that the codes tend to be a little bit longer than Wi-Fi codes. So your guests might have to punch in a slightly longer number in order to access their room. And the third type of entry method that ResNexus locks can provide is RFID access. So this could be a key card or a key fob or even an RFID sticker that you can stick to really anything you want. And this is a great option if you still like the idea of being able to manage access for your guests online, but you also still want to provide a physical key for them. So, because maybe not everyone wants to type in a code to access their room, maybe they just want to use a key. And the benefit here is, of course, that you can manage your key cards online. And if your guests lose their key cards, you don't have to replace actual metal keys and locks. You can simply delete those lost key cards from the system until they turn up again. Every RFID card, fob, or sticker comes with a number on it. And this number refers to that specific key and is basically its name within your system. And you can configure which keys are allowed to access which areas and at what times using access schedules. Obviously, if you want to use RFID keys as an entry method, then you'll need to purchase some. Just like for buying locks, you can reach out to your hospitality business coach or to ResNexus Sales, and we'll get those ordered for you. One thing to note about RFID cards, if you choose to go that route, is that they come as blank white cards by default, apart from the reference number at the bottom. Remote Lock does not provide printing services for these cards, so you have a few options for branding them after your business. The first option is you can hire someone who can provide printing services for cards, so you can give them your RFID cards and they can print your branding on them. Or if you have a card printer of your own, you can do it yourself. And then the third option is you can potentially find another provider for these RFID cards of the correct format that also provides printing services along with it. So you could give that a shot as well. And this QR code will take you to one example of a service that does this very thing. However, if you do go this route of using a third party to purchase some printed RFID cards, we do recommend that you get a sample card first and test that out on your locks before you buy cards in large quantities. Because, of course, it would be a big shame to buy 100 branded cards only to find out that they don't work because it's the wrong format or something like that. It looks like this service mostly sells in batches of 100, and that's what this link goes to. Key fobs are a little easier because you don't necessarily expect those to be branded, or else you can attach it to a key ring that has a little laminated paper or card, and that could have the room number and the property name on it. Or you could just go with the sticker and put it on anything you wanted. With the locks that ResNexus provides, they do operate off of battery life, allowing them to be totally wireless. The lifetime of this battery life depends on a lot of factors. The most significant factor would be the frequency of access and usage, because obviously whenever someone opens the lock or closes it or uses the electronics in there, it's going to use more battery than when it's just sitting there. Many locks provide an expected battery life of 12 to 18 months with typical use in their product specs, or around 10,000 operations. If the batteries do run out before you're able to replace them, the locks generally also have a regular keyhole, which you can access manually with one or two keys they usually send along with the lock. So in a pinch, you can still access the room. However, these keys are not something you should be handing out to guests. Under normal circumstances, you shouldn't ever need to use the physical key at all. All right, let's move on to the ResNexus door locks integration, so you can see more about how it works within the system. To get started, you'll need to reach out to your ResNexus Hospitality Business Coach or Sales in order to purchase your locks, or you can reach out to your support person to integrate your existing locks if they are compatible. Once your account is connected, you can move forward with lock management. And that begins with the General Settings page. Here, you can configure your overall settings for your locks integration. You can choose whether guest codes also work for property locks, such as front and back doors, gates, or other facilities, and whether door locks automatically lock again after a code is used to open them. Random codes is a useful setting, allowing you to configure whether guest codes will use a part of their phone number or whether the code will be randomly generated. The benefit of the phone number version is that your guests are more likely to have the code already memorized because it's a part of their phone number. But a random one might be more preferable for security purposes. It's ultimately up to you to decide. Note that this setting is ignored for locks that are using algorithmic access. And there's also the programming code, which allows you to program your locks and devices. Scrolling down, there are a few other settings to know about on this page. The low battery warning setting allows you to input an email address. And then whenever a lock on your property falls below 25% battery life, an email will automatically be sent to that email address. So whether you want that to be one of your staff members or your maintenance person or just yourself, that's a useful setting for alerting you about batteries that need replacing soon. The next setting down allows you to set how many days before check-in the lock codes can be created. Again, this only applies to locks configured for Wi-Fi, not for algorithm. And the final setting allows you to decide what times the locks are active for the guests for arrival and departure dates. And if you ever need assistance, don't forget to make use of the Help Me Use This Page button in the bottom right. You might find the answer to your question there. Otherwise, you can always reach out to support for further help. All right, so those have been the universal settings for locks. Let's go take a look at the next page where you can manage each lock individually. Here, you can view the list of all integrated locks. That includes the lock names, their access schedules, if you have any that apply to them, Wi-Fi connectivity status, assigned rooms, access types, and serial numbers. This page is also useful to check on every now and then to monitor the battery status of the locks. So if you get that email that says one's below 25%, you can also see if the other ones are also close to that point as well. Note that if you want to view access logs to see when and how locks are being opened in sort of a more of a record or a log, you can do that from within your remote lock account, which should be integrated or attached to your ResNexus account. When you click on a lock name or add a new lock, you can assign it to a unit, give it a name, and then input the serial number of the lock. If that lock supports multiple different functions for entry, you can also select which ones to enable. If a lock has RFID functionality, then you can enable that regardless of whether the lock also supports Wi-Fi or algorithm pins, but you cannot have both Wi-Fi and algorithm at the same time. It has to be one or the other for that. Moving on, let's talk about master codes. So master codes are codes that aren't really for guests. Instead, they're for you or anyone else to gain consistent access to certain designated areas. So basically, they're not tied to reservations and can be used regardless of any guest's arrival or departure times. And this is pretty straightforward. You simply add as many master codes as you need. You can give them specific names, such as for emergency services or for individual staff members. And then you can assign each one any number of locks across your entire property. Each master code will only function for the locks to which it has been assigned. Now on to key cards. And when I see key cards, again, I really just mean as shorthand for RFID devices. So again, that could be actual cards or key fobs or RFID stickers. And the key cards section, of course, allows you to review and add key cards for specific reservations. You can view assigned key cards, see what rooms they're tied to, and when they're active for. You can also remove access for individual key cards using the red trash can icon. To add a key card, you simply click the Add Key Card button and input the key card number. And again, this is the number that's printed on the actual card or key fob or sticker. And then type in the reservation number for that booking. The key card will then automatically pair with that reservation, and it'll become active for the entirety of the stay. And once again, if a key card ever gets misplaced, you can remove its access and then provide the guest with a new key card by reassigning it using this exact same method. Keycards are a great option, but if you'd like to provide a contactless check-in for your guests, you'll probably rely more on the Wi-Fi or algorithm locks. So how do you deliver the lock codes to your guests upon arrival? There's a couple different ways. The first and most straightforward method is to just include the door code in your welcome emails. So when your guest receives their welcome email before arrival, you can provide them with their access codes at the same time. And you can do this using the lock code tags, for example, in your email builder or in text messages. And there are three options here for different formatting for the lock code tags, but they're all pretty simple. So lock codes will present the assigned locks alongside the code itself in kind of a formatted table like this. The lock code simple tag will do so without that formatting. And then lock codes no HTML is just text. So that's useful for if you want to send your guests lock codes via text messaging. And speaking of texts, that's also a great option if you do use ResNexus text messaging. So you could configure an automatic text message with the lock codes no HTML tag, and whenever you send it out to a guest, it'll automatically fill in that tag with that guest's specific code for their reservation. The benefit to this is that the guest is much more likely to find and view their text message than with an email. Alternatively, you can make use of the guest portal with contactless check-in, and this allows the guests to view their lock code on this screen. You can provide the guest portal link to your guests via welcome email or by providing a QR code for them to scan when they arrive. And then they simply input their reservation number and their phone number, and then they gain access to the guest portal, which allows them to do contactless check-in, and also they can access their lock codes on this page, as well as a bunch of other tools from this handy browser page. For lock installation, it's fairly straightforward, and the locks come with comprehensive instructions. Note that neither ResNexus nor Remote Lock provide installation services. The locks, like I said, the locks do come with good instructions, and ResNexus support can assist with setting up locks in your software, but installing the locks themselves physically into your property would be your own or your handyman's responsibility. And finally, let's go take a look at the locks that ResNexus offers. There are a number of different lock brands represented here. We're going to start with the key and code locks. This category has the most options available to you and is the only brand that offers the algorithmic access options. In fact, every key and code lock, with the exception of the 3500 series locks, has this algorithm access functionality. All other key encode locks also have RFID capability. So with key encode, you generally have the most versatility of any locks on this page. With key encode, you generally have two style options. You've got brushed steel and matte black. Key encode locks are durable and have a strong integration with ResNexus and also with Remote Lock. Moving on, the next brand is McGrath. McGrath locks don't have RFID or algorithm access functionality, and in fact, none of the locks that follow do, although they often come at a cheaper price point. McGrath locks have a sleek design and come in black or silver finish, and the majority of them are lever locks, but they also do have a deadbolt option. Schlager locks have a unique style, especially when it comes to the Camelot trim option on the left with its fancy aesthetic. And they're also easy to install, and they come in both lever and deadbolt options. Now moving on to Yale. These Yale locks all have capacitive touch screens with backlit numbers that don't wear off. The left lock on the screen, the YRD226 deadbolt, has a weather protection gasket, making it suitable for outdoor or indoor use. Notably, I talked earlier about physical keys. The YRD256 deadbolt on the right is actually completely keyless, meaning there's no physical key needed whatsoever. And the lock does also have a backup charger, so you can give the lock power to enter your code in case the battery runs out. But like I said, you should be getting an email anytime it falls below a certain percentage anyway. We have two Pro Lock models available, the Slim line and the Deluxe, and they're both available in black or silver finish. These longer lock cases are helpful for covering existing holes in the door, and they have a stainless steel construction. And they're also rated for indoor and outdoor use. All right, and the final thing I'd like to say about ResNexus locks is that it's easy to get started. All you have to do is reach out to your hospitality business coach and let them know that you're interested in ResNexus door locks, and they'll be able to help you out and get locks ordered from there. ResNexus locks provide fantastic convenience for both you and your guests, and they come in a variety of options and styles. If your property is held off of using these electronic locks because of a spotty Wi-Fi connection, you might be interested in our key and code locks that allow for algorithmic access, which requires no Wi-Fi connection. All right, and we've come to the end. I'll get to the Q&A in just a moment, so feel free to start dropping your questions into the field provided. In the meantime, I'd like to say that if you enjoyed this webinar and would like to view any of our past ones, you can do so by going to our website, resnexus.com. When you scroll to the bottom, you'll see a webinars button, which will take you to our entire library of past webinars. And you can also register for upcoming webinars on this page. All right, and with that, we are at the Q&A. I've got Todd Butcher here. He's on our training team. He's going to be able to help me out answering questions for everybody. So thanks everyone so much for attending, and I'll just wait a few minutes and see if any questions come in. So we've got a question. Is there any support for retrofitting hotel Onity locks? I'm not really sure what that is. Can you speak to that at all, Todd? I don't really know about those locks.
So right now, as it is, the only locks that we currently support are the ones that are either directly sold by us or that are listed on Remote Lock's website. That's not to say that in the future there won't be support for those types of locks. It's just if Remote Lock builds out support for it themselves, then we would support it at that point.
Yeah, and that's correct. I think there might be a slightly larger list of locks that we can connect with. The ones, like I said, the ones on the website are the ones that we do sell, but there are additional ones that if they're no longer being sold, you might still be able to integrate with them. But generally, it's going to be those same brands, I believe.
So we've got a few questions in here. There's one, do the locks fit most types of doors? Yes, generally. If it's a standard door with a standard strike plate and the lock that you purchased fits the existing holes that are there for the locks, then yeah, it would definitely work. If the door, like some doors may be possibly too thick, and if so, that they specify the thickness of the doors that the lock will fit on our website and Remote Lock's website. So, but yeah, they do fit most standard doors. And then if Pro Lock would be best in a hotel, that's really up to personal preference. Um, for your personal aesthetic for your property, um, if you feel that the look and the style and the feel of the Pro Lock would be best for your hotel, then that would definitely be a choice that you could go with. Ultimately, it's really up to personal preference. They all have similar qualities and characteristics that would benefit all types of properties.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. Sorry, I was in the wrong tab. I wasn't seeing the questions. My bad.
Oh, okay. No
Um,
worries.
we've got another one. What if you already have a subscription to Remote Lock? Would you have to pay both ResNexus and Remote Lock to take advantage of the integration in ResNexus?
That is a really good question. So with the way that it works, if you already have a Remote Lock subscription, you just have to reach out to Remote Lock directly, and they will be able to set it up to where it is being integrated with ResNexus. And at that point, since we do have a $6 per month per lock fee, that would actually take care of the subscription for you at that point to not only maintain the connection with us, but also to handle remote lock subscription as well. That's what that's for.
Okay, perfect. Another question. Make sure I spoke about this right earlier. On algorithm, is it true that you can't change the dates? So, what if a guest leaves early, another guest checks into that room? I can make a guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Todd. But I believe that if you had another guest who's going to check into that room and the old one ended early, um, you would then just create a new algorithm lock. So the new guest would be able to access that room for their new reservation stay date. I guess if the old guest happens to come back, I guess if it still falls within what would have been their end date, their code would still work. Is that correct? Do you happen to know about that?
Um, You'll have to double check a little bit on that, but the way that the algorithm works just uses complicated math to determine the codes at any given point in time. Let me just I'm going to double check on that one, and I'll get back here in just 1 second on that one. If you wanted to look at another question in the meantime.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And we can always reach out to you if we're not able to find the question immediately. We can always reach out after the webinar with the comprehensive answer to that question. Um, Once the locks are in place, what additional costs are there? So I think Todd already partially answered that. I believe you said it's $6 per lock per month. I think that's all the costs that are involved. Obviously, if you battery replacements, that's another thing to consider. But yeah, I think it's just that $6 per lock per month.
Yeah, just the monthly addendum to the subscription for the $6 per month per lock, and then I guess if you have Wi-Fi, obviously internet fees at that point to keep your locks connected to the internet. But other than that, yeah, that's it.
Is the code on the RFID card changed after each guest? So if someone's using an RFID card, they're not typically going to be punching in a code on the keypad. They're just going to be tapping the card on the scanner and then their door will open. If you're talking about the number that's on the card itself, again, that's just the number for the card. That number does not provide access to anything. It's just the name for that card. So, if it was a real name, it'd be like Bob, but Bob, just because you say Bob at the lock doesn't mean it's going to open for you. So yeah, in theory, if you have a key card, it won't be able to access any other rooms, and they're basically just temporary. Do we support any sliding door locks? I'm not sure if any of these are compatible with sliding doors. Do you happen to know that, Todd?
From looking at the locks and the way that they are set up currently, they're not configured for sliding door locks for any of the ones that we
Mhm.
offer at the moment. That's not to say that that will not be available in the future. We're always looking to add more availability for the locks. Um, but it looks like as of right now, they're specifically for just typical open closed doors as opposed to sliding doors.
Yep, that makes sense. Let's see. What would be the best outdoor Wi-Fi lock? Do you have I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of these locks personally, so I can't really attest to them with like personal experience. Todd, do you happen to know of any that you would particularly recommend?
So like hands-on experience personally, I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with a lot of these locks. A lot of them are rated for both an indoor and outdoor use. Um, and so at that point, like in the description for each lock, it will tell you if it is rated for both indoor and outdoor use, in which case it would work for both. The wonderful thing is that there is a 1-year manufacturer warranty with these locks offered through remote lock for like any defect or parts malfunctioning, things like that. Um, and since they are rated, if a lock is rated for indoor and outdoor use, then it should handle the outdoors as much as possible. Um, and so can rest assured that there's a little bit of a warranty in place for if something malfunctions and something stops working when it's meant to work outdoors. But if a lock says it is rated for outdoor use, then it can be put outside just fine. And at that point, it's
Yeah,
just personal preference.
that's awesome. I know for key and code locks, there we also offer a weather cover, sort of a transparent plastic cover that might be able to help with that as well. So that is also good. Let's see. This question. We have 2 doors per room. Is it possible to control both doors on one room? Yes, I believe you can assign multiple locks to one room. So if you got like a back door and a front door, if you got just 2 separate doors for one unit, yeah, you should be able to basically assign those both to that room. And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the code will be the same. Like if you assign a code to to one lock, it'll work for both if it's for the exact same unit. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. If it's
Okay,
for the same unit on the same reservation, it would be the exact same code.
awesome. Is there a tamper notification capability to get alerted if someone is trying to brute force your lock codes? That's a great question that I don't know the answer to. What do you think, Todd?
And from what I've seen on the remote lock side, you can set up notifications for every time a lock opens and closes. That may be an option depending on how many locks that you currently have at your property, how many guests that you have. It would send out a notification each time a lock was open and closed. You can also set up alerts for events such as a failed code. So you can set it up that way. It's not set up by default, but in the account settings for remote lock, you can set it up to where you can have those events sent to you. It won't come from the ResNexus side, but inside of your remote lock account, you can configure that.
Okay, yeah, awesome. It sounds like a lot of those more in-depth things you may still have to access your remote lock account from time to time, but for the most part, for your daily operations, you should be able to do most everything from within ResNexus. Is there a system that opens with the presence of a person's Bluetooth cell phone? I don't believe we currently integrate with that capability right now. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
by default, not at this time. Some of the individual locks that like some of them have like an app that would be also required to install it, and they might have that capability within that particular lock, but it's not something that we actively support on our end.
Yeah, I do know if you, like the owner, are configuring locks, I believe some of them have the way to initially set them up. You might be able to use your phone over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to set it up, but no, it's not. I don't believe it's currently like a guest access option that we support. All right, looks like questions are slowing down. Did you ever happen to get an answer on that question from earlier about the algorithm codes?
I did. So since the lock actually uses a mathematical algorithm to determine what the code will be at any given point in time. If the code was set given to somebody for until their reservation, basically, if they left a couple days early, they would technically still have a functional code um, until the standard time that it would have already expired. But there's no way to remove the code once it is assigned with an algorithm lock.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's perhaps one of the downsides. Theoretically, that shouldn't be a super common occurrence that someone happens to leave early and someone else happens to take that exact same spot. And even in that such a case, the person who leaves wouldn't necessarily know that their code still works for another day. Um, but it's just simply the nature of, like I said, with the complicated math that goes into it and the algorithm. There's just not really a way to necessarily get around that sort of messing with the lock itself. But again, the benefit to that is that you don't have to have it be over Wi-Fi. So for people who want that extra functionality, but they don't have a consistent Wi-Fi, that could be a good option. So would the second guest use the same code? No, it would be a second code, assuming that it doesn't have the exact same start and end dates. Let's say, guest A is coming to stay April 5th to the 7th. Guest B ends up taking the 7th and or maybe the 6th and the 7th and going through the 8th. It would generate a new code for that guest because it's going to be based on those start and end dates, and it's going to generate something new. So both codes would work for that narrow window in the middle. Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, we'll keep it open for another minute. But in the meantime, I'd just like to say thanks everybody for attending. I hope you got value out of this webinar, and I hope you all find the lock solutions that work best for all of you. Is this info on your website to review? Yes, if you go to resnexus.com and go under integrations, there is a door locks page. You can go there to view a lot of this information and view our catalog of locks. If you ever want to learn more, like I said, just reach out to your support representative, to your hospitality business coach, and they'll be able to help you out from there. Another question, let's see. What if the guest gets kicked off the property? There would be no way to cancel that code. So it depends on what you're using. If it's going to be algorithm, that code will be active for the duration of the stay that was put forth in the beginning. If you're doing a Wi-Fi or key card access, then you can revoke access. It's just for the algorithm. Yeah, that's kind of the limitation of the technology. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, any final things from you, Todd?
Nope, I think that pretty much covers it. So yeah, nothing specific from my end, no.
All right, awesome. Hopefully I did a pretty good job. Hopefully I didn't get too many things wrong. All right, perfect. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and yeah, have a good one.